Enraged snake wraps around German Shepherd. What happened next shocked everyone. A story that will leave you speechless. What happens in the middle of this tale completely changes the ending. We'd love to know. What city are you watching this video from? Drop your answer in the comments. And while you're here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our content. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden shadows over the quiet rural town of Red Hollow, Texas. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth after a morning drizzle. Michael Carter, a 42-year-old veterinarian, had just finished his routine checkups at his small animal clinic and was heading home to his 12-year-old son, Ethan, and their beloved German Shepherd. Max wasn't just a pet. He was family. Loyal, intelligent, and fiercely protective. The dog had been Ethan's best friend since he was 5. They were inseparable. Wherever Ethan went, Max followed. Their home was a modest farmhouse nestled near a dense stretch of woodland, a place both beautiful and wild. It was a quiet, safe haven, or so they thought. That evening, as Michael prepared dinner, Ethan played in the yard, tossing a ball for Max to chase. Laughter filled the air, mixing with the rustling leaves of the tall oak trees. The boy was carefree, unaware that something was lurking just beyond the tree line. Something watching, something waiting. Suddenly, Max stopped mid-run, ears perked, body tense. His tail stiffened, and a low, menacing growl rumbled in his throat. Ethan, noticing his dog's strange behavior, turned toward the trees. Then he saw it. A massive rattlesnake, thick as a man's forearm, was coiled near the base of a fallen log, its diamond-shaped head raised and unblinking eyes locked on the boy. The rattle at the end of its tail trembled, a warning that sent chills down Ethan's spine. Max, in an instant, placed himself between Ethan and the snake, his teeth bared, his stance unwavering. Then, it happened, faster than a heartbeat. With a whip-like motion, the snake lunged. But instead of sinking its fangs into Ethan, it struck Max. The German Shepherd yelped in pain, staggering back as the rattler coiled tightly around his body. Its muscular body began constricting, its jaws gaping, ready for another strike. Ethan screamed, his voice ripping through the evening air. Michael dropped everything and ran outside, his heart pounding. He saw Max, his faithful companion, entangled in the coils of the venomous predator. The sight paralyzed him with fear. What happened next shocked them all. Michael's heart slammed against his ribs as he sprinted toward Max. Ethan stood frozen, tears streaking his face, his small hands clenched into fists. The rattlesnake, easily over 6 feet long, tightened its grip around Max's muscular frame. The dog's powerful body convulsed as he fought, teeth snapping, claws scratching against the dirt. But the more he struggled, the tighter the serpent coiled. Michael's mind raced. A bite from a rattlesnake was one thing, but being constricted was another. It wasn't just venom they had to worry about. Max was being crushed alive. Without thinking, Michael grabbed the closest thing he could find, a rusted shovel leaning against the porch. "Ethan, get back," he barked, his voice raw with fear. But Ethan didn't move. His wide eyes were locked on Max, watching as his best friend whimpered and struggled, his strong legs kicking at the serpent's crushing embrace. Michael rushed forward, raising the shovel high. But just as he was about to strike, Max did something unbelievable. With a final burst of strength, the German Shepherd twisted his body and sank his teeth into the snake's thick, scaly hide. A sharp, sickening crunch echoed as his powerful jaws clamped down, tearing into the reptile's flesh. The snake hissed violently, its coils loosening ever so slightly. It thrashed, trying to shake the dog off. But Max held on. That was Michael's chance. He swung the shovel with everything he had, aiming straight for the snake's head. Crack! The metal blade connected, severing the rattlesnake's body in a violent spray of dust and blood. The reptile's grip instantly went slack, and Max collapsed to the ground, panting heavily, his body trembling. For a split second, silence. Then, Ethan let out a choked sob and threw himself over Max. "Dad, he's not moving." Michael dropped to his knees, his vet instincts kicking in as he frantically checked Max's breathing. His chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. But then Michael saw it, 2 puncture wounds on Max's hind leg, already swelling. The venom was spreading. Michael's stomach turned to ice. They had minutes, maybe less. He turned to Ethan, gripping his shoulders. "Get in the truck. Now." Ethan didn't hesitate. Michael scooped Max into his arms and ran, his pulse hammering. Every second counted. As they sped down the dirt road toward town, dust kicking up behind them, Michael could only pray they'd make it in time. Because if they didn't, Max wouldn't survive. The night air was thick with tension, the distant rustling of leaves blending into the symphony of crickets and unseen creatures that thrived in the dark. The beam of Michael's flashlight cut through the blackness, illuminating the damp earth beneath his boots as he moved cautiously through the backyard, rifle at the ready. Somewhere ahead, beyond the line of oak trees, Max was out there, alone. Ethan's frantic voice still echoed in Michael's head. "Dad." Max ran into the woods. "He's in trouble." Michael had never seen his son so terrified. It was enough to send him sprinting into the night without a second thought. Now, standing on the forest's edge, his gut twisted with unease. Something about this night felt wrong. Then he heard it. A snarl. Low. Guttural. Not like Max at all. Michael froze, his breath hitching. His fingers instinctively tightened around the rifle as he took a cautious step forward, sweeping the flashlight across the undergrowth. Shadows stretched in unnatural ways, twisting with the movement of the trees. And then, he saw them. 2 glowing orbs, hovering in the darkness. Michael's pulse spiked. The eyes, golden, reptilian, were staring straight at him. "Max?" he called out, his voice strained. Silence. Then, a rustle. Michael took another step, and suddenly, his flashlight beam fell upon the scene just ahead. His stomach dropped. Max was there. But he wasn't alone. The dog's muscular body was pinned to the ground, his paws flailing, his jaws snapping wildly at something coiled around him. A massive snake, thick as a man's thigh, its scaly body wrapped around Max's torso, constricting tighter with every passing second. Its skin was jet black, but when the light hit it, an eerie, golden sheen shimmered along its ridges. Max let out a muffled growl, his claws scraping at the serpent's coils, but the snake held firm, its powerful body pulsing as it squeezed. Michael's heart slammed against his ribs. Jesus Christ! This thing was huge. He had seen rattlesnakes before, but nothing like this. No snake in these woods should be this big, this strong. "Max, hold on." Michael lifted his rifle, aiming at the serpent's thick body. His finger pressed against the trigger. Then, suddenly, the snake's head snapped toward him. Michael's breath caught in his throat. For the first time, he saw it clearly. The eyes. Not the cold, black beads of an ordinary snake, but golden, luminous, almost intelligent. And they were locked onto him. A chill ran down Michael's spine. He had spent years hunting, tracking animals, knowing when a predator was acting on instinct and when it was truly aware of its prey. This thing? It wasn't just hunting. It was watching, studying. And now, it had noticed him. Then, it moved. Faster than he thought possible. The snake's massive head lunged toward him, its jaws parting to reveal 2 long, curved fangs, glistening with venom. Michael fired. The shot echoed through the trees, the muzzle flash illuminating the darkness for a split second. The bullet hit, but the snake didn't fall. It jerked back, hissing in pain, but instead of retreating, it only tightened its grip on Max. Max let out a sharp yelp of agony. Michael cursed, pumping another round into the chamber. His hands were slick with sweat. The snake had been hit directly, but it wasn't reacting like a normal animal. It should have died, but it didn't. Michael knew he didn't have time to figure out why. Max was running out of air. With a deep breath, he took aim again, this time at the serpent's head. The snake hissed violently, its body coiling tighter, but before it could strike again, Michael pulled the trigger. The second shot ripped through the creature's eye. The snake let out a bone-chilling screech, something no snake should be able to do. Its body shuddered violently, its coils loosening just enough. Max seized the moment. With every ounce of strength he had left, Max twisted his body, his powerful jaws clamping down on the serpent's thick, muscular neck. The snake thrashed, sending leaves and dirt flying. But Max held on, his teeth sinking in deeper. Michael watched in awe as his dog, his loyal protector, fought back. The struggle was brutal, the snake's body writhing wildly, its tail slamming against the earth. But Max wouldn't let go. With a final, desperate growl, the German shepherd wrenched his head to the side and ripped the snake's flesh open. A sickening, wet tear filled the night air. The snake shuddered once, then its massive body collapsed. Max stumbled back, panting heavily, his legs trembling from exhaustion. Michael rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside his dog. Max, Max, look at me. He ran his hands over the dog's fur, checking for wounds. Max was shaking, his breath labored. But when his eyes met Michael's stomach twisted. The golden glow in the snake's eyes was gone. But now, it was in Max's. Michael's breath caught in his throat. His dog, his Max, stared back at him. And for the first time in his life, Michael didn't recognize him. The night was eerily silent. The kind of silence that made Michael's skin crawl. The body of the enormous snake lay motionless on the forest floor, its black scales glistening under the pale moonlight. The air was thick with the metallic scent of blood, and a damp, almost electric tension hung between the trees. But Michael couldn't focus on any of that. Not when Max was looking at him like this. His dog's breathing was ragged, his powerful chest rising and falling as if he had just run for miles. But it wasn't exhaustion that sent chills down Michael's spine. It was his eyes. Max's usual deep brown eyes, the same ones that had greeted Michael with unconditional loyalty every morning, were now golden. Not a warm amber, nor a trick of the light. They were the exact same glowing gold as the snake's had been. Michael's grip on his rifle tightened, his pulse thudding in his ears. His mind screamed at him that it wasn't possible, that maybe it was a trick of adrenaline, of stress, of the dim flashlight flickering in his shaking hand. But the longer he stared, the more he knew. This wasn't his Max. At least, not entirely. Max, Michael whispered, his voice rough, uncertain. The dog didn't respond. Max just stood there. His powerful body was tense, his ears pricked forward, his tail unnaturally still. Michael had trained Max since he was a puppy. He knew every twitch, every wag, every expression of his dog's body language. But now, it was all wrong. Max wasn't acting afraid, relieved, or even aggressive. He was just staring, watching, the same way the snake had. A chill ran down Michael's spine. Max, he tried again, firmer this time. He reached out, hesitantly, to touch his dog's fur. The second his fingers brushed against Max's coat, the dog's body jerked. Michael barely had time to react before Max let out a deep, guttural growl. Not a normal growl. This was low, primal, a sound that felt too unnatural to come from his dog's throat. Michael yanked his hand back instinctively. His heart hammered as Max's lips curled slightly, revealing his sharp canines, now stained with the snake's blood. Something was wrong. So wrong. Michael forced himself to stay calm. He had been through hell before. He had seen animals act strangely after fights. Maybe Max was in shock. Maybe he was injured. Maybe then, Max's pupils narrowed into slits. Michael's breath caught in his throat. No, that's impossible. Dogs' pupils didn't do that. But Max's had, just like the snake's. Michael's grip on the rifle was suddenly suffocating. He had faced predators before. Bears, cougars, even men who had meant him harm. But nothing in his life had ever made him feel this kind of fear. Because this, whatever was happening to Max, was something he couldn't explain. Max let out another growl, but this time, it sounded distorted. Like there were two voices layered on top of each other. One, deep and guttural, his dog's usual tone. The other, a hissing, almost whispering echo. Michael took a slow step back. His mind raced for answers. Could it be rabies? Some kind of neurological damage from the fight? Was he hallucinating? Then Max blinked, and for a split second, Michael swore the golden glow in his eyes flickered, like something inside him was shifting, struggling, fighting. The thought made Michael's stomach churn. He needed to get out of here. Now. Come on, boy, he murmured, his voice tense but steady. Let's get you home. Max didn't move. For a long, unbearable moment, they stood there, man and beast, locked in some silent standoff. Then, finally, Max's body seemed to relax. The golden hue in his eyes faded slightly, his pupils rounding again. The tension in his muscles eased. His ears twitched, and his tail gave a slow, almost hesitant wag. Michael exhaled. Maybe it really was just shock. Maybe Max was confused and hurt, just like he was. Or maybe, Michael shook the thought away. He crouched, carefully wrapping an arm around his dog's massive frame. Max flinched at first, but allowed the contact. His body was warm, too warm, like he had a fever. Michael gritted his teeth. He needed to get Max back to the house. Now, with a deep breath, he hoisted the dog up, supporting his weight as they staggered toward home. The snake's body lay abandoned in the dirt, its lifeless eyes staring into the void. But as Michael and Max disappeared into the darkness of the trees, the dead serpent's body twitched, a subtle, almost imperceptible shudder. Then, it stopped, and the forest was silent once more. Max's body convulsed violently, his legs twitching as if he were dreaming. Then, suddenly, his eyes snapped open, but something was wrong. Michael's breath caught in his throat. Max's eyes, they weren't the same. The familiar warm brown was now mixed with a strange, golden hue. His pupils were slitted, like those of a reptile. Ethan gasped. Dad, what's happening to him? Max let out a low, guttural growl, but it didn't sound like him. His body tensed, muscles rippling beneath his fur, as if something was changing inside him. His breathing, once labored, was now eerily steady. Doc. Harris's face remained unreadable, but Michael could see a flicker of unease in the old man's eyes. This ain't normal. Michael stepped forward, instinctively reaching for Max, but the dog suddenly snapped his jaws toward him, stopping just inches away from his hand. Ethan yelped and backed away. Max, Michael called, his voice shaking slightly. It's me, buddy. It's okay. Max's ears flicked, and for a moment, the golden glow in his eyes dimmed. Recognition flickered across his face. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. Without warning, Max leaped off the couch, moving with unnatural speed. He bolted through the open door and into the night, disappearing into the darkness. Max! Ethan screamed, running after him. Michael grabbed Ethan's arm before he could get too far. Wait, we don't know what's happening to him. Ethan struggled against his father's grip. We can't just let him go. His voice cracked, tears forming in his eyes. Doc Harris stood at the doorway, staring into the night, his expression grim. He's not just running. Michael turned to him. What do you mean? Harris tightened his jaw. I think he's hunting. Silence fell over them. A distant howl echoed through the dark woods, not like any howl Michael had ever heard before. It was deep, guttural, unnatural. Ethan shivered. Dad, what's happening to Max? Michael didn't have an answer, but deep in his gut, he knew. This was only the beginning. The night air was thick with tension. The distant howl that had sent a chill down Ethan's spine faded into the darkness, but its echo lingered in Michael's mind. Max was out there. But was he still Max? Michael turned to Doc Harris, his fists clenched. What the hell did you do to my dog? Harris met his gaze, calm but unshaken. I saved his life. Ethan shook his head, tears brimming in his eyes. That's not Max anymore. Harris sighed, rubbing his temples. The venom should have killed him, but what I gave him changed something. Michael stepped closer, his voice low and sharp. Changed what? The old man hesitated. That snake that bit him. It wasn't just any rattlesnake. He exhaled, looking toward the dark tree-line. It was something older, wilder. I've only heard whispers about it. Some say its venom doesn't just kill, it alters. Ethan's breath hitched. Alters? Alters how? Before Harris could answer, another inhuman howl shattered the silence. Michael's instincts kicked in. Max was in trouble. Or he was the trouble. "We have to go after him," he said, already grabbing a rifle from the rack near the door. Ethan blocked his way. "No, we can't hurt him." Michael hesitated. "I don't want to. But if something's wrong with him, if he's dangerous," he trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Ethan's eyes pleaded with him. "He's still in there, Dad." "I know he is." Harris grabbed his own weathered shotgun, checking the chamber. "There's only one way to find out." Michael nodded. "Let's move." The three of them stepped into the night, following the faint, distorted paw prints Max had left behind. And as they moved deeper into the woods, none of them could shake the feeling that they were no longer the hunters. They were being hunted. The forest loomed ahead, thick with shadows, the trees swaying under the weight of the wind. A full moon hung low, casting a pale glow over the path, but it wasn't comforting. It only made the darkness beyond seem more menacing. Michael gripped his rifle tightly, his heart pounding against his ribs. Every step forward felt like a mistake, but turning back wasn't an option. Ethan followed close, his small flashlight flickering as he swept it through the trees. "Max," he called, his voice shaking. "Max, come back, boy." Only silence answered. Doc Harris trailed behind, moving with a careful but unshaken pace. He carried his shotgun low and steady, his sharp eyes scanning the woods like he knew something they didn't. Michael noticed. "You've seen something like this before, haven't you?" Harris hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "A long time ago. Not quite the same, but close." His voice was low, almost regretful. Michael narrowed his eyes. "What happened?" The old man exhaled. "Not everyone came back." Before Michael could push further, Ethan froze. "Did you hear that?" Michael listened. At first, only the sound of the wind rustling through the trees. Then, snap. A branch broke to their left. Michael swung his rifle toward the noise, his pulse spiking. "Max?" he called out. No answer. Then, another crack. Closer this time. Ethan whimpered. "Something's moving." Harris slowly raised his shotgun. "Stay close." The underbrush shook violently, as if something was charging straight for them. Michael barely had time to react before a dark shape burst from the trees. But it wasn't Max. It was a deer, its eyes wide with terror, panting heavily as it stumbled past them. Its legs wobbled, its body trembling, like it had just seen the devil himself. Then, Michael saw it. The bite wound on its hind leg. The same twin puncture marks Max had. Blood oozed from the wound, but the flesh around it was wrong, distorted, like something inside the animal was reshaping it. Michael's stomach turned. Ethan gasped. "What's happening to it?" The deer suddenly jerked its head, looking toward them. Then, its eyes flashed gold, the same golden, reptilian hue that Max had. Michael's breath caught in his throat. Jesus Christ! The deer let out a choked snarl, a sound that no deer should ever make, before it bolted into the trees. Ethan clutched his father's sleeve. "Dad, that was—" Michael squeezed his shoulder. "I know." Harris's voice was grim. "We need to find that dog. Now." And then, a low, guttural growl echoed from behind them. Max was watching, and they were not alone. The growl sent ice through Michael's veins. It was low, guttural, almost inhuman, yet undeniably coming from Max. Slowly, Michael turned. Through the tangled trees, a pair of golden, reptilian eyes glowed in the darkness. "Max?" Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. The figure in the shadows moved, graceful, calculated, not like a dog. Max stepped into the pale glow of Ethan's flashlight. Michael's breath caught. Max was different, bigger, stronger. His fur was darker, almost glossy, reflecting the moonlight like polished scales. His muscles seemed denser, his stance predatory. And his eyes, they weren't just glowing. They were alive, pulsing with something ancient and wild. Ethan took a step forward. "Max, it's me." Michael grabbed his son's arm, holding him back. "Stay still." But Max wasn't attacking. He simply stood there, his gaze flicking between them, as if studying them. Then, his nose twitched, his ears perked, his head snapped toward the trees. Something else was out there. Snap. A branch broke in the distance. Michael's grip on his rifle tightened. Then, a scream. Not human. Animal. A deep, pain-filled roar shook the forest. Max bolted toward the noise, moving with unnatural speed. Michael didn't think. He just ran after him. Ethan followed. "Dad, wait." Doc Harris cursed under his breath and sprinted after them. The deeper they went, the thicker the air became. As if the forest itself was holding its breath. Max was ahead, his powerful legs carrying him effortlessly through the underbrush. He wasn't running away. He was chasing something. Then, they saw it. A massive cougar lay struggling on the forest floor, its body convulsing. Its fur was drenched in blood, but not from any wound they could see. Something was happening to it. Max circled the animal, growling low. Michael's heart pounded. What the hell is going on? The cougar suddenly lurched upward, letting out a sound that was not natural, a distorted mix of a snarl and a hiss. Then, Michael saw its eyes. Gold. Reptilian. Just like Max's. The transformation was spreading. Max lunged. Fangs bared, claws out. He struck the cougar with brutal force, knocking it back. The two animals clashed, rolling through the dirt in a violent battle. Ethan gasped. "Dad, we have to stop them." Michael gritted his teeth. "We don't even know what Max is anymore." Max sank his teeth into the cougar's throat. The wild cat let out a horrifying shriek, then went still. Michael braced himself. Max had killed before, but now it felt different. Max released his grip, his chest rising and falling. Then, he turned his head toward them. His golden eyes met Michael's. For the first time since this nightmare began, Michael saw something familiar in them. Recognition. But before anyone could react, Max collapsed. Ethan ran forward. "Max!" Michael barely managed to pull him back. "Wait." Max's body twitched violently, his breaths coming in short, pained gasps. Something inside him was fighting. Doc Harris's voice was urgent. "If we don't act now, we might lose him for good." Michael clenched his jaw. Max had saved them, but could they save him? The clock was ticking, and whatever had infected him wasn't done yet. Max's body convulsed violently, his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Ethan struggled against Michael's grip. "Dad, we have to help him." Michael's heart was hammering. Max wasn't just injured. He was changing. The same golden, reptilian glow flickered in his eyes. But now, something else was happening. His fur rippled, like something beneath his skin was shifting, reshaping. Doc Harris knelt beside Max, his fingers hovering over the dog's trembling body. "Damn it," he muttered. "It's spreading faster than I thought." Michael's stomach twisted. "You knew this would happen." Harris gave him a sharp look. "I didn't know it would be this bad." Max let out a low, agonized whimper, and Ethan broke free from his father's grip, dropping to his knees beside his best friend. "Stay with me, boy," Ethan pleaded, running his hands over Max's head, his touch gentle but desperate. Max's breathing hitched, his muscles tensed. Then, his eyes snapped open. Ethan gasped. Michael raised his rifle instinctively. Max's golden gaze was locked onto Ethan, but something had changed. The glow was still there, but it wasn't wild anymore. It was conflicted, like Max was fighting something inside him. Then, Max growled, but it wasn't directed at Ethan. His head whipped around, ears pinned back, teeth bared, toward the trees. Harris sucked in a breath. "It's still here." Michael's blood ran cold. "What?" Harris cocked his shotgun. "Whatever infected Max. It's not just a disease. It's alive." Then, the forest moved. At first, it was just a whisper of leaves. Then, a shape emerged. A massive, serpentine creature slithered forward, its scaled body cutting through the darkness. Its skin was black as oil, its ridges lined with glistening gold patterns. But the most terrifying part, its eyes. The same golden, reptilian glow. Michael's breath came in short bursts. Jesus Christ, the snake was huge, easily 15 feet long, its body thick as a tree trunk. But its movements were unnatural, too smooth, too calculated. And it was staring straight at Max. Max snarled, struggling to his feet. He swayed, but he held his ground. Ethan whispered, "He's not afraid." Michael gritted his teeth. "He should be." The snake hissed, its tongue flicking out. Then it lunged. Michael fired instinctively. The bullet hit, but the creature barely flinched. Max dodged the strike, baring his teeth. His body was still trembling, but something had shifted. The predator within him was awakening. Doc Harris reloaded. "That thing wants Max back." Ethan's eyes widened. "Back?" Harris nodded grimly. "He wasn't just bitten. He was chosen." Michael's stomach twisted. "Chosen for what?" Harris's voice was like steel. "To become one of them." Max lunged. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. Max lunged first, his powerful legs propelling him forward like a missile. The massive snake struck back, its fangs flashing under the moonlight. It moved too fast for something so big, its coils twisting unnaturally as if guided by something beyond instinct. Michael barely had time to react. Max met the serpent midair. Their bodies collided with a sickening crack, rolling through the dirt in a blur of fur and scales. Ethan screamed, "Max, no!" The snake coiled around Max, its thick body wrapping around the dog's torso, squeezing. Max let out a deep, guttural growl of pain. Michael raised his rifle. "Don't shoot!" Doc Harris yelled. Michael's finger hovered over the trigger. "What?" "We have to. Max is still fighting it. If you hit him now, you could." Crack! The snake tightened its grip. Max's body jerked, his limbs twitching. His golden eyes flickered. For a second, just a second, Michael saw the fight in them fading. The infection, the curse, whatever it was taking hold. Ethan was crying. "Dad, please. We have to do something." Michael clenched his jaw. He couldn't let Max become one of them. Then, something changed. Max's body, once struggling, suddenly stopped. The snake sensed it too. For a brief moment, it loosened its grip. That was its mistake. Max's eyes snapped open. Not golden, not reptilian. His eyes were his own again. And then, Max attacked. With a sudden, explosive force, he twisted his head and clamped his jaws down on the snake's throat. The creature let out a bone-chilling screech, thrashing violently. But Max held on. Michael watched in shock as Max's fur bristled. His muscles bulged, and for the first time, he wasn't just fighting to survive. He was winning. The snake reared back, convulsing, then suddenly began to break apart. Its massive body shuddered violently, the black scales cracking, splitting, like something was tearing it apart from the inside. Max didn't let go. With one final, feral growl, he ripped the serpent's throat open. A deafening hiss echoed through the forest, then silence. The snake's body collapsed, its golden glow fading into the darkness. Then, it disintegrated. Its body turned to dust, vanishing into the wind. Ethan sprinted forward, falling to his knees beside Max. Max, the dog, was panting heavily, his body trembling. Michael rushed over, dropping beside his son. "Max?" Max lifted his head. His eyes met Michael's. And for the first time since this nightmare began, they were normal again. The golden infection was gone. Max let out a low, tired whimper and collapsed into Ethan's arms. Michael released a breath he didn't realize he was holding. It was over. 3 weeks later, Max was fully recovered. The town was buzzing with rumors. Some said it was just a wild animal attack gone wrong. Others whispered about ancient spirits in the forest, curses that had awoken after years of being forgotten. Michael didn't care about the stories. All that mattered was that Max was alive. As for the snake, no body was ever found. Doc Harris had one final theory. That thing wasn't natural, he had said. Maybe it wasn't from this world at all. Michael didn't argue. That night, as he watched Ethan playing with Max in their backyard, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Not just with Max, but with all of them. Because deep in the forest, something still watched, and it was waiting for the next time.